50 years ago, on December 24, 1968, 3 American astronauts became the first human beings to orbit the moon. James Lovell, William Anders, and Mission Commander Frank Borman, the crew of Apollo 8. 6 weeks prior to launch, a NASA official told Borman that their flight plan included a live broadcast to Earth on Christmas Eve. Then he reminded the astronaut to say something appropriate because more people will be listening to your voice than to that of any man in history. Borman's choice of material was truly inspired. And as the spacecraft transmitted unprecedented close-ups of the moon's surface, the lunar explorers, now 240,000 miles from home, read these timeless words typed upon a sheet of fireproof paper. For a world captivated by the moment, it was the perfect Christmas message.
Lunar sunrise, and for all the people back on Earth, the crew of Apollo 8 has a message that we would like to send to you. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good, and divided the light from the darkness.
And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night, and the evening and the morning were the first day. And God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters." And God made the firmament, and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so. And the evening and the morning were the second day.
And God said, "Let the waters under the heaven be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters called he seas. And God saw that it was good. And from the crew of Apollo 8, we close with good night, good luck, a Merry Christmas, and God bless all of you on the good earth.
Christ the Savior is born. Christ the Savior is born.
There's something in the human nature, and I would say it's because we bear the image of God, that seeks to understand the things around us, that wants to search out available resources or potential use of the things around us, to look what's around the corner, to see over the horizon, to want to know what's across this big body of water.
Proverbs 25:2 says, "It is the glory of God to conceal a matter, but the glory of kings is to search out a matter." We've seen how the spread of Christianity led to an explosion of scientific discovery. Educated people no longer thought of the night sky as the realm of pagan gods. Christians see the universe as a creation of the living God, which means it's subject to the same laws of physics and chemistry that apply on Earth, like gravity. Isaac Newton showed us how the same forces that cause an apple to fall to the ground also hold the moon in orbit around the Earth and the planets around the sun. In this episode, we'll see how the science of astronomy has changed in the modern age. The last century has been a time of unprecedented technological growth, and we have gained remarkable insights into the universe. But what about God? Have our more recent discoveries confirmed or contradicted the Bible? Well, let's find out. Let's see where this journey takes us next.
The first time you go to space, one of the first things you want to do is look out the window and get a view of the Earth. And it is magnificent. It's impossible to describe the sensations that one has seeing the earth and seeing the beauty of the earth and seeing the weather formations, the land masses, the beautiful colors of blues and browns and whites. And that's the first impression, and it's the impression that you maintain no matter how many times you go back. I never get tired of viewing the earth from orbit and seeing the magnificence and the beauty of it. Going to space and viewing the planet from orbit and knowing all of the components of life support, if you will, given in the design of the earth, and then the order of God's creation that you can see in so many different ways, gives me a fuller and a deeper appreciation for that God who has revealed himself in the scriptures.
I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the earth.
15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10.
The images and words are iconic. And for almost anyone alive during the 1960s, they spark indelible memories of what has been called the greatest achievement in human history. Man's first landing on the moon.
875 feet. 4 forward, drift into the right level.
30 seconds.
Forward, drift. Okay, engine stop. Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
Yet while Apollo 11 remains a hallmark of our collective past, a significant event occurred on the mission that went unnoticed by the more than 600 million people who watched from Earth with breathless anticipation. On July 20th, 1969, astronaut Edwin Buzz Aldrin celebrated communion on the moon.
Houston, Tranquility, over. Tranquility, Houston, go ahead. Roger, this is the LEM pilot. I'd like to take this opportunity to ask every person listening in, whoever, wherever they may be, to pause for a moment and contemplate the events of the past few hours and to give thanks in his or her own way. Over.
For Aldrin, giving thanks meant shifting his focus from the challenges of the journey to the power and grace of the God who had made it possible. And as Mission Control initiated a 5-hour period of radio silence so the astronauts could rest before their first walk on the moon, he removed a packet from his spacesuit and arranged its contents: a silver chalice, a wafer, a small vial of wine, and a note card with a handwritten passage from the Gospel of John. Later, the pilot reflected on his decision to observe the Christian sacrament 240,000 miles from home.
During the radio blackout, I prepared the bread and the wine. As I poured the wine into the chalice our church had given me, the 1/6 gravity of the moon caused the liquid to curl slowly and gracefully up the side of the cup. Then I read the scripture which I had chosen to indicate our trust in Christ. I am the vine, you are the branches. Whoever remains in me and I in him will bear much fruit, for you can do nothing without me. I remember the sound of the eagle's metal body creaking as I ate the wafer and swallowed the wine. I gave thanks for the intelligence and spirit that had brought 2 young pilots to the Sea of Tranquility. At the time, I could think of no better way to acknowledge this enormous achievement than by giving thanks to God. Then I offered a prayer for the task at hand and the opportunity I'd been given.
The Apollo 11 mission was a spectacular success, and on July 21st, Buzz Aldrin, Neil Armstrong, and Michael Collins departed for Earth. The night before re-entering the planet's atmosphere, they broadcast live to another global audience. Once again, Aldrin chose to acknowledge his creator.
Personally, in reflecting the events of the past several days, a verse from the Psalms comes to mind to me. When I consider the heavens, the work of thy fingers, the moon and the stars which thou hast ordained, what is man that thou art mindful of him?
On July 24, 1969, Buzz Aldrin, Neil Armstrong, and Michael Collins ended their historic expedition by splashing down safely in the Pacific Ocean. In an interview, Aldrin noted that it was fitting the first liquid ever poured on the moon and the first food ever eaten there were the elements of communion.
For most of history, much of the sky was hidden, where there are many kinds of light our eyes can't see. And despite the use of powerful technologies that made this light visible, the sky remained veiled because our atmosphere blocked much of the light from reaching the ground. But there was a plan. 4 special telescopes that could fly above the atmosphere and into space, where they could see the universe more clearly. Each one gifted with special abilities to see part of the hidden light. Joining forces, they would reveal a more complete picture of the universe around us. They were the Great Observatories. The Spitzer Space Telescope, created to see the infrared universe. But because much of the infrared light comes from relatively cool objects in the cosmos, there was one condition on which Spitzer's special power rested. It had to be very, very, almost ridiculously cold in order to see the infrared world. Otherwise, the telescope's own heat and that of the Earth around it would overwhelm its special abilities. But Spitzer was up to the challenge. Once launched into space, high above the infrared-absorbing atmosphere, it journeyed far from the warm infrared glow of Earth. It shielded itself from the sweltering sun and chilled out using a special cooling contraption it had brought. And as Spitzer cooled down, the infrared sky came into view like never before. With its power of infrared sight, Spitzer could see through clouds of dust in space to show the places where stars are born. Spitzer even studied alien planets in other solar systems, something even its creators never designed it to do. Together with the other great observatories, Spitzer helped reveal many distant and fascinating places across the universe. But after several years, Spitzer's special cooling contraption ran out of juice, meaning it would soon warm up. Would this mean the end of our hero's observing days? Not Spitzer. There was still plenty of infrared things it could see just fine. And it just couldn't quit. Many years later, having revealed a whole side of the universe we would not have seen without it, NASA's Infrared Great Observatory retired. But because of their success, Spitzer and its Space Telescope super friends would not be the last of the great observatories. Soon, another powerful infrared observer would follow, taking up the legacy of those that came before.
All 50 years ago, we pioneered a path to the moon. A trail we blazed, cut through the fictions of science, and showed us all what was possible.
It's very pretty out here.
Today, our calling to explore is even greater. To go farther, we must be able to sustain missions of greater distance and duration. We must use the resources we find at our destinations. We must overcome radiation, isolation, gravity, and extreme environments like never before.
These are the challenges we face to push the bounds of humanity. We're going to the moon to stay by 2024, and this is how.
This all starts with the ability to get larger, heavier payloads off-planet and beyond Earth's gravity.
For this, we designed an entirely new rocket.
The Space Launch System. SLS will be the most powerful rocket ever developed.
And with components in production
And more in testing.
This system is capable of being the catalyst for deep space missions
we need a capsule
that can support humans from launch
through deep space and return safely back to Earth. For this, we've built Orion.
This is NASA's next-generation human space capsule.
Using data from lunar orbiters that continue to reveal the moon's hazards and resources.
We're currently developing an entirely new approach to landing and operating on the moon.
Using our commercial partners to deliver science instruments and robotics to the surface, we are paving the way for human missions in 2024.
Our charge is to go quickly and to stay, to press our collective efforts forward with a fervor that will see us return to the moon in a manner that is wholly different than 50 years ago.
We want lunar landers that are reusable,
that can land anywhere on the lunar surface.
The simplest way to do so is to give them a platform in orbit around the moon from which to transition.
An orbiting platform to host deep space experiments and be a waypoint for human capsules. We call this lunar outpost Gateway.
The beauty of the Gateway is that it can be moved between orbits.
It will balance between the Earth and Moon's gravity,
in a position that is ideal for launching even deeper space missions.
In 2009, we learned that the moon contains millions of tons of water ice.
This ice can be extracted and purified for water. It can be separated in oxygen for breathing or hydrogen for rocket fuel.
The moon is quite uniquely suited
to prepare us and propel us to Mars and beyond.
This is what we are building.
This is what we're training for.
This we can replicate throughout the solar system.
This is the next chapter of human space exploration.
Humans are the most fragile element of this entire endeavor, and yet we go for humanity. We go to the moon and on to Mars to seek knowledge and understanding and to share it with all. We go knowing our efforts will create opportunities that cannot be foreseen. We go because we are destined to explore and see it with our own eyes. We turn towards the moon now, not as a conclusion, but as preparation, as a checkpoint toward all that lies beyond. Our greatest adventures remain ahead of us. We are going.
We're going.
We are going.
We are going.
We're going.
Artemis 1 will restore America's ability to reach the moon with systems built for humans. Launching east from Kennedy Space Center, the Space Launch System will propel an uncrewed Orion spacecraft to orbit and then commit to a lunar trajectory with a trans-lunar injection. This outbound coast will intersect with the moon to enter a distant retrograde orbit. With systems checked, the engine will once again fire to exit lunar orbit and set Orion on a path back to Earth.
We are going. The history of this agency is marked with broken barriers, once viewed as impossible, with science fiction turned reality, with innovations that have spun industries all their own, and with demonstrations of peace for all humankind.
We soar in the skies of our home planet. We maintain a human presence just outside of gravity, and we touch points all across the solar system and beyond. We're going back to the moon, and this is why.
The moon is a treasure trove of science.
It holds opportunities for us to make discoveries about our home planet, about our sun,
and about our solar system.
The wealth of knowledge to be gleaned from the moon will inspire a new generation of thought and action.
Without fail, every major program and mission NASA has invested in has led to technologies and capabilities that have shaped our culture.
The breakthroughs of the Artemis era will define our generation and the generations to follow.
The tens of thousands of jobs associated with propelling us to the moon today are just the beginning of a lunar economy that will see hundreds of thousands of new jobs develop around the world.
This is not an ambition of one entity or one country. The exploration of the moon is a shared effort,
woven together by a desire for the greater good.
Why the moon? Because the missions of tomorrow will be sparked by the accomplishments of the Artemis generation today.
Because the ambition to go has already begun.
And because Mars is calling. We need to learn what it takes to establish a community on another cosmic shore. So let's camp close before pushing out.
And so, we go to the moon now, not as a series of isolated missions, but to build a community on and around the moon capable of proving how to live on other worlds.
We'll use the lessons from more than 50 years of peaceful exploration to send a new generation to the lunar surface to stay.
We will anchor our efforts on the lunar South Pole to establish the Artemis Base Camp,
positioning us for long-term science and exploration of the lunar surface.
We will prove what it takes to assemble a complex ship in deep space.
We will perfect descending down to and returning from a distant surface.
We will learn how humans can survive and thrive in a partial gravity environment.
With improved spacesuit designs, mobile habitats, and with reconnaissance robots pre-positioning and relocating supplies.
We will learn how to utilize the resources we find on these other worlds, starting with finding water ice and purifying it to drinkable water.
And refining that into hydrogen for fuel and oxygen to breathe.
We will establish fission power plants on the surface of the moon, capable of supporting a growing community of efforts.
And we will expand the logistics supply chain to enable commercial and international partners
to resupply and refuel deep space outposts.
None of this is simple or easy, but nothing in our history ever has been.
The Eagle has landed. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're breathing again. Thanks a lot.
This kind of continuous lunar presence is a natural extension of all that we've learned in low Earth orbit. And what we will accomplish there will ensure the monumental missions to Mars are within reach. As we ready the launch of the first Artemis mission, and as commercial companies ready their lunar landers for the first private payload deliveries, we have already begun to take the next step.
So it's a great honour for me to be here today with Dr. Henry Richter. He's the author of this book, America's Leap into Space, and it talks about his time at JPL and the first Explorer satellites. Now, Explorer was the first satellite in space launched by the free world to beam radio transmissions back to the Earth. And of course, Dr. Richter, later you oversaw Surveyor, which was the first time we'd visited our moon and actually landed on the moon, and that paved the way for the later Apollo missions, of which I was a great fan. Fixed to my TV, I can still remember as a young man watching all those missions. But now, what about when we send satellites out into those far reaches, of space? We're intersecting planets like Saturn or Jupiter or even Pluto, as they've done recently. It takes years for those craft to travel there. So if I said to you something like, in fact, the clockwork motion of the planets, I think, is an attribute of God's design. Would you agree with something like that?
Oh, absolutely.
Of course, Dr. Richter, unfortunately, some people would say that you and I are somehow misled, or even worse, that we might be part of some sort of conspiracy, or we just haven't understood and we've been taken in by some sort of false science. Well, as we mentioned, you are a scientist. You could test and observe these things, but you're a Bible-believing Christian, so what would you say to folks like that?
I came to my own conclusions by studying the Bible myself, and it was a while before I found I could get teaching that helped me understand some of the deeper things of the Bible. But to me, the Bible is just very clear as to how the universe was put together, why man was created, why we exist, and the fact that our Creator wanted us to know Him, which is mind-blowing, really, to be part of the universe, but at the same time, to have a relationship with the one that created the universe as well as created me.
Now, one of the great rocket scientists of our time was Dr. Wernher von Braun, who at the end of the Second World War, of course, he was a German and he worked for the Nazis, and my understanding is he became a Christian during his time here in America. And I wrote in my book, Alien Intrusion, that he believed that our endeavors and searching in space would reveal the handiwork of the Creator. Well, you've developed craft that have been out there. What would you say in that regard?
Well, first of all, I worked with von Braun. He provided the rocket that launched our satellite, the Redstone. But I became a Christian after age 40. Von Braun also later in life. Both events were beyond the time that we knew each other. I have regrets I didn't track him down and talk about our faith, but I didn't. But he was a great thinker, was very interested in space travel, but again, he gave the glory to God, put it all together.
I've got a book at home from an astronaut who's been on board the space shuttle, and it's full of beautiful coloured photographs of the Earth from space. I can see my home country, Australia, and we can see the west coast of America where we are now. And of course, to me, one of the most profound photographs ever taken in all of human history was Apollo 8. Borman, Lovell and Anders, when they circumnavigated the moon, and on Christmas Day they broadcast a message back to the Earth. They read from Genesis 1, but we see Earthrise.
For all the people back on Earth, the crew of Apollo 8 has a message that we would like to send to you. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good.
The big blue marble, they called it. But again, it shows the precision with which the universe exists. The fact that the Earth rose at a certain time, they were all prepared to photograph it, and gave them a real realization as to how vast the universe is and how marvelous.
Dr. Richter, thank you very much.
Between 1968 and 1972, America launched 9 human missions to the moon, 6 of which successfully touched down, allowing 12 men to walk on the lunar surface. NASA's next chapter of lunar exploration, called Artemis, has the task of not just going to the moon to create a long-term human presence on and around it, but also to prepare for ever more complex human missions to Mars. In short, everything we must be able to do here, we must first do here. So, what will an Artemis mission look like? Everything is designed and tested with our most important element in mind, the astronauts. This is their deep space, human-rated spacecraft called Orion. built in 3 parts. The crew module, where up to 4 astronauts will live and work throughout the flight. The service module, with life support systems for the crew and its own engine and fuel reserves. And a launch abort system, with engines capable of pulling the crew module to safety during launch should anything go wrong. To accomplish the task of launching our crew and heavy payloads, NASA is building the Space Launch System, comprising of a cargo hold, an exploration upper stage, a massive core stage, and 2 extended solid rocket boosters. Altogether, this is the world's most powerful rocket, and it exceeds the legendary Saturn V of the Apollo era in numerous ways. Sitting on the launch pad, the entire rocket, fully fueled, weighs just over 6 million pounds, 5.2 million of which is just the fuel. Once ignited, there was no stopping what comes next. All 4 RS-25 engines and the 2 solid rocket boosters come to life, thundering our crew upwards. 2 minutes after ignition, the solid rocket boosters are spent and released. 8 minutes after launch, the core stage is depleted and separated. The upper stage fires briefly, placing Orion into a parking orbit around the Earth. Here, the crew reconfigure the spacecraft and check systems to confirm everything is ready for deep space travel. With a go from mission control, the crew reignite the exploration upper stage engines to leave Earth entirely. The exact timing of this maneuver is critical to reach a speed that can escape Earth's gravitational pull, but also put Orion on a course that will intersect the Moon days later. Once this burn is complete, the upper stage of the SLS is jettisoned and the crew aboard Orion coast for several days toward all that awaits them at the Moon. Approaching the Moon, we see the fundamental differences between Artemis and Apollo. Instead of requiring Orion to serve as an expendable lunar command module or to carry a constrained lunar lander, the Artemis missions will take advantage of a different approach: pre-staging. Everything needed for lunar missions will be positioned in advance by commercial and international partners. This includes rovers, science experiments, and human-rated systems on the surface. But it also includes a dedicated lunar station in orbit around the Moon called Gateway. Here at this station, we can pre-stage a robust lunar lander and establish a strong communications relay. Designed with open standards, the Gateway can be expanded as new missions and partnerships develop, allowing multiple human missions on the Moon at the same time and enabling ongoing science to be conducted even between human missions. The Gateway is also capable of adjusting its orbit to allow access to every part of the Moon, something the Apollo missions could not do. But the real key in this approach is placing Gateway in a unique halo orbit to perfect the maneuvers needed for Mars missions. And with the growing list of commercial and international opportunities, Gateway is the ideal hub between Earth and all that lies beyond. Returning to our crew as they approach Gateway, the Orion must match the elliptical orbit of the station in order to successfully dock. Once on board, pre-selected crew members transfer to the lunar lander, while those assigned to Gateway remain on station. The lunar lander system itself is built for 3 unique steps: descending from the halo orbit of Gateway down to a low lunar orbit, descending from low lunar orbit to the surface, and once the lunar mission is complete, launching from the surface of the Moon and ascending all the way back to the orbiting Gateway. Once back aboard the Orion spacecraft and undocked from Gateway, the crew fire their engine once to break out of the halo orbit and once again to sling the spacecraft around the Moon, placing it on a multi-day trajectory back towards Earth. As they near the end of this journey, the service module is released, and the crew module is oriented heat shield first. Entering Earth's atmosphere at 25,000 miles per hour, the friction of air slows Orion considerably, while also subjecting it to temperatures of 5,000 degrees. With the Orion now at just 300 miles per hour, a series of parachutes uniquely tested and produced for this moment deploy, decelerating the craft to just 20 miles per hour for splashdown. With each successful mission, Artemis ushers in the next wave of men and women to explore our Moon and prove that together we are ready to go beyond.
Well, in a broad sense, there's a continuous impact. When you have in the back of your mind the truth of the Creator and His infinite wisdom in the design and the order and the purpose and His plan, in the details of his creation. So with all of that in mind, you know, in the back of the mind when you're viewing something, you see that. You see the provision in very unique ways. From a personal level, I've got stories, I suppose. One story that's my favorite had to do with an account in 2006 when I was 6 weeks into a 6-month stay. And 6 weeks there, I was having a down day. 6 weeks was a long time, knowing that the family was separated on the surface of the earth, and though we communicated every day, we were still separated. And 6 weeks into 6 months, you don't see the end. It's over the horizon. Yeah, so I was having a kind of a down day. There were 2 of us on board, so it wasn't a lot of company. And my crewmate, who was a great crewmate, great friend, was Russian, so there's one Russian, one American on board. It's just one of those days. We all have down days, right? And as I mentioned, we talk every day.
But we don't all have down days in space.
That's true. That's true.
But I'm trying to imagine.
My wife and I typically talk 2 or 3 times a day while I'm up there. So she knew I was having a down day. You know, I confessed that to her. And late morning on this day, I went back to the very back end of the space station and spent a few minutes with Pavel and had a bag of tea. We don't have cups of things. We have to put it in a bag. But I had a bag of hot tea, and we visited a while. And then I was going to head back to the forward end of the space station to continue my work. And I floated over a window where I typically had a camera staged to take pictures. And I looked out the window, just took a glance, and saw this snow-covered peak poking through the clouds, and thought, oh, I'm not in any rush. Grabbed the camera, grabbed a picture of it. Quickly realized there was a line of these islands, and they were the Aleutian Islands. I realized right away, so I thought, oh, I'm going to get some good shots of this with these beautiful snow-covered peaks poking through the clouds. Took a picture of one island, then the next, then the next, then the next. And something in the back of my head said, hey, there was something strange with that last one. I went back and reframed it, and it was an erupting volcano. And I had enough time to snap maybe 2 or 3 pictures of it, and then it was out of view. But I had the entire plume in the frame of the photograph. So I knew right away it was a brand new eruption that had just started. And I got all excited. I yelled at Pasha, and by the time he got to the window, it was gone, so he didn't see it. And I was very, animated about this whole thing. I floated back up to the forward end of the space station, got on the radio, called Houston, and said, hey, I just saw this erupting volcano in the Aleutian Islands, and and I took some pictures, and I'll put them on the communication system to get them downlinked to you, so you can take a look at them, and you might want to check into it a little bit. But anyway, now we're coming back around. 90 minutes later, I was back in the window, and the eruption was done. There was this beautiful peak poking through the clouds with fresh lava flowing down the sides of the mountains, but there was not even a puff coming out of the top of it. And the plume was way downwind out of that frame. Later, I saw a wider satellite frame that the Alaskan Observatory had ordered up, and you could see this big plume that was about 200 miles downwind of the volcano that was all intact, and then this volcano with this fresh lava flowing down the side. The classic-looking volcano, too. So I was back there, snapped a few more pictures. Of course, now I'm out of my slump, out of my funk, and I was raised up, and I'm excited, and it's going to carry me on for a period of time. And, of course, everybody was excited. The Houston Mission Control Center team was all excited about it. So there's a lot of excitement that came out of it. But I finally concluded when it was all over that in a very special way, it was the Lord's provision for me to raise me out of my slump in a very special way. And I would like to, with a little bit of sense of humor, say that I'm probably the only person on or off the planet that saw that particular eruption. The island the volcano is the name of Cleveland, so anybody can look it up and see its history. This was May of 2006. And more significantly, from a Christian point of view, it was a direct answer to a prayer that Anna Marie had prayed, that the Lord would bring something into my day.
And who's Anna Marie?
My wife, Anna Marie.
Okay.
So,
and you had
as I
talked
said,
to her that day?
We had communicated. She knew I was going through a bad day. And so that, in a very unique way, was a special and direct answer to her prayer.
Wow.
Prayer.
Wow. So the Lord that you know, respect, fear, honor, and love, He took care of you, even in what we might think of as a little thing.
Absolutely. In fact, He takes care of us continually in the little things. And I've learned over the years to look for the little things. Many refer to the providence of God. And I am a great study of I have a great love for the study of the providence of God, which is evident throughout the scriptures. And if we look for it, it's in our lives. He orchestrates the details of our lives.
At NASA, we have always answered the innate call to go.
With Artemis,
we are going to stay.
Proving that humanity
can live on the moon,
Mars,
and other worlds,
and share the wonders of the solar system with all.
Our story is one of people.
All those who make this journey possible.
From advocates across communities,
to companies across industries,
to countries around the world,
we achieve
this collective endeavor.
Our efforts create impact for all.
Technologies that revolutionize industries.
And jobs that bring prosperity to people.
The discoveries from space
benefit the way we live on Earth today.
And those from the moon
will create a better future
for generations to come.
But to do that,
we must go.
Hi, I'm Chell Lindgren. My name is Raja Chari.
Kayla Barron. Kate Rubens.
Hi, I'm Christina Cook.
NASA astronaut Joe Acaba.
Jessica Amir.
Woody Hoberg.
Anne McClain. Stephanie Wilson.
My name is Johnny Kim.
Nicole Mann.
Victor Glover.
Jessica Watkins.
Hi, I'm Matthew Dominic.
Jasmine Mogbelli.
Frank Rubio.
Scott Tingle.
This is what we do.
This is what we will do.
Let's go.
We go to the moon to learn how to live on other planets.
For the benefit of all.
Well, Henry, your book, Spacecraft Earth, A Guide for Passengers, just came out.
Yes.
So tell us about the title of this book. Why did you call it Spacecraft Earth, A Guide for Passengers?
Well, you should say our book, but because you were certainly a good part of it. As a geophysicist, I was always very impressed with the Earth and the fact that it can support life. And so as a part of the space program, I learned more and more about the Earth. And pretty soon it became obvious to me that everything that's here is here because it needs to be to allow life to exist on this Earth. And that's what the book is about, all kinds of features that may seem inconsequential, the physical laws, the kinds of elements that are present on the Earth, the position of the Earth with respect to the sun, the fact that we have a moon, a magnetic field, and that's the theme of the book. It's remarkable that we have this Earth that we have to live on.
Now, I know you've been thinking about this subject for a long time, so how did you come about wanting to write a book on this subject?
Well, I've been giving talks throughout my professional career and about the space program, and I sort of developed that theme in my talks. And people urged me, you ought to put this in a book. So I made a first effort at a book, but the book needed some rework, and Dave came in and offered to help me redo it. And so now it's out in beautiful print. CMI did a marvelous job in putting this together and producing it.
So what a privilege to have a book like this by a key member in those days of the space race. And one thing that I think that makes this book so special is that it tells your own personal story about those days and how you came to appreciate all the wonders in nature, especially human life, and how that led you to find a relationship with the Creator. All right, thank you, Dr. Richter. Great to spend a little time with you. And get this book, Spacecraft Earth, A Guide for Passengers. That's each one of us.
Charlie Duke wrote, "I used to say I could live 10,000 years and never have an experience as thrilling as walking on the moon. But the excitement and satisfaction of that walk doesn't begin to compare with my walk with Jesus, a walk that lasts forever. I thought Apollo 16 would be my crowning glory, but the crown that Jesus gives will not tarnish or fade away. His crown will last throughout all eternity." See 1 Corinthians 9:25. While I was on the moon, my belief was in the theory of evolution. However, since that time, I have put my heart to Jesus and the reality of the Holy Bible. I believe now with all my heart in God as the Creator, and this book, The Moon by John C. Whitcomb and Donald B. DeYoung, has been a tremendous inspiration to me to understand more fully the reality of God's creation. It's actually a really good book. It's been updated a couple times. It's now called Our Created Moon, and it's nice hardcover with nice pictures and stuff. James Irwin stated, "I was born into a family in which both my mother and my father knew God. I learned about Jesus Christ from my mother, and I am grateful to her for this. I will never forget the day when I first visited an evangelical Baptist church. God himself seemed to say, 'Now it's your turn. I want to enter your life and fill it with myself.' So I turned to the Lord, and he began controlling my life in his all-wise and loving way. I didn't know where the Lord would lead me, but my only desire was that it would be upwards." What about Neil Armstrong? Thomas L. Friedman is a 3-time Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist who writes a weekly column for the New York Times. He reported, "When American astronaut Neil Armstrong, a devout Christian, visited Israel after his trip to the moon, he was taken on a tour of the old city of Jerusalem by Israeli archaeologist Meir Ben-Dov. When they got to the Holda Gate, which is at the top of the stairs leading to the Temple Mount, Armstrong asked Ben-Dov whether Jesus had stepped anywhere around there. 'I told him, look, Jesus was a Jew,' recalled Ben-Dov. 'These are the steps that lead to the temple, so he must have walked here many times.' Armstrong then asked if these were the original steps, and Ben-Dov confirmed that they were. 'So Jesus stepped right here?' asked Armstrong again. 'That's right,' answered Ben-Dov. 'I have to tell you,' Armstrong said to the Israeli archaeologist, 'I am more excited stepping on these stones than I was stepping on the moon.'"
We are at Kennedy Space Center. Every piece of hardware necessary to return to the moon is now here.
They are being assembled, stacked, fueled, and primed for flight.
The next time these engines fire up, we'll be on the launch pad to send an uncrewed Orion spacecraft around the moon on a flight test for the Artemis 1 mission.
It's been a journey of 1,000 miles from factory floors all across this country and around the world to here. And now the stage has been set.
We are seeing Artemis take her place.
The framework to support the enormity of this moment can't be measured in renovations and rehearsals alone.
But in the testing of a metal found much deeper.
With each segment built upon the one before it, the volume of anticipation can be seen rising.
For in addition to certifying what a host of testing has already previewed,
liftoff. The dawn of Orion and a new era of American space exploration.
Artemis will demonstrate a new path to the moon for this generation.
Artemis 1.
An uncrewed test flight will be a final proving of every system
and every component
in the harshness of space.
A mission that, when successful, will open the door for the moonwalkers and lunar experiments
that so many have hoped and dreamed about.
We are going.